Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking every single movie that I saw in July, and I'm going to start off saying a couple things. For one, in the last 3 weeks, I've gotten multiple comments saying, hey, you talk really fast, so I am going to be trying to talk slower, and if there's ever a point where I am speaking and it sounds like I am going in slow motion, it is because I'm trying to speak a little bit slower. I might have ADD, I'm not entirely sure, but I have a habit of getting excited and speaking really quickly, so I apologize for that. But that being said, we're going to be ranking every single movie that I saw in the month of July, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, I did miss a lot of movies that came out in July. I really wanted to go see Longlegs. It still looks really good. I might potentially go see it now, but that being said, that's one of the big ones that I missed. And then another thing is, I want to go ahead and say this. I watched the movie Kinds of Kindness during the month of July. Technically, it came out in June, but I'm including it in this ranking because it wasn't in theaters near me until July. So, I'm going to be ranking 5 movies, and let's dive into this. Alrighty, so coming in dead last place, this movie is just simply put not a movie that's made for me. It's Despicable Me 4. In my opinion, Despicable Me, that franchise as a whole, probably should have ended after the second one. The first one, pretty good. I like it. I think that everything about that movie is so iconic, and I think that it has that I was gonna say like an it factor, but it has that like nostalgia factor. It's a classic, kind of similar to like movies like Finding Nemo and stuff like that. A lot of people growing up around the time that I grew up will have fond memories of the first Despicable Me movie. However, the franchise has gone steadily down here. I feel like this movie doesn't really add anything really new or interesting, and all of the gags just feel so overused. The minions don't feel as funny as they once did. Everything with the super minions was super underutilized, in my opinion. I think that the fact that there was so much marketing and advertising around them, I was like, okay, this is going to be an actual interesting part of the plot, but it was so similar to how in the third Despicable Me movie, they randomly like get arrested and have some weird prison break sequence, and it's like, what are the minions even doing anymore at this point? I feel like they just have these characters who are such famous IP that they're like, we have to keep making these movies, but it's so worn out, it's so exhausting. As somebody who is an adult and I don't have kids or anything like that, I don't feel a need to watch these movies anymore, and I probably will not be watching any of the future ones. Also, I will say this, everything with the baby, that's such a trope that they do in young movies. Young movies? Movies for kids that I just can never get on board with. I didn't find it very entertaining. And you combine that with the stuff with the minions, and this movie was just very annoying to me. Coming in 4th place, this one was really good for the first 2 acts. I'm talking about the movie Maxine. Overall, I really liked this movie. I think that the style was fantastic. I think that the direction was great. As far as period pieces go, fantastic. I really enjoyed the 80s feeling of this movie. I feel like Giancarlo Esposito's character was a very fun inclusion in here. It kind of felt like a little bit of elements from movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where they're trying to show, you know, how the movie industry and how some of the behind the scenes stuff is a little more sketchy and it's not as great and as picture perfect as you would want it to be. And I think that everything with Mia Goth in this is fantastic. Her acting is excellent and she's doing a really good job portraying this character. But overall, this movie kind of falls apart in the fact that we're introduced to the Night Stalker, and there's this person who's going around and he's killing a bunch of people, and then they kind of like reveal that the person who's actually doing the murders in this movie is not the Night Stalker. All of a sudden, these killings that are showing up, completely unrelated. A lot of the things seems like somebody is taken over, and it kind of feels like another amateur person who's going around killing, and then they just start killing off a bunch of characters that are really close to Mia Goth, and the entire movie, we're focused on Mia Goth's character and we're focused on Maxine, and I understand she's the title character of the movie, that makes sense, but it's because of that we're missing a lot of the fun slasher elements. We're not getting to see specific characters' final moments, and we're not getting to see them trying to run away from the killer and not being able to escape them and anything like that, and we're missing a lot of the gore from good 80s horror movies. There's a couple of moments where they do some cool slime, like sludge practical effects and stuff like that, but for the most part, none of these murder sequences reminded me of like Scream or the original Halloween movie, which is what I was kind of expecting it to play into. And then overall, the third act is just so out of nowhere. For a whodunit slasher film, which is what they said they were going for, it doesn't really set up who did it, and I feel like that's one of the most painful parts of this movie for me, is it could have been a really cool movie if they had maybe spent more time with some of the other characters in this movie, and if they laid a couple more, you know, like hints at who the killer might have been, because that reveal for me just completely did not work. A lot of people online were saying that it was super predictable, and overall it just felt so out of nowhere. And then all of the like death scenes and all of the like really interesting stuff with the killer being caught at the end of the movie is not shown, because we're focusing on Maxine, and her perception of everything that's going on is kind of like blurred, and she has no idea what's going on. And it just felt like a really weird director's choice to do that. So in my opinion, the movie's solid. It just ended so poorly that I don't recommend it to people. And speaking of not recommending to people, I have the movie Kinds of Kindness. I really did enjoy this movie, and I do want to go ahead and say these top 3 were really hard for me to rank because I enjoyed every single one of these. This movie is so interesting. It is one of the most peculiar movies I've ever seen. It's really diabolical. There's a lot of moments in it that are like, it's so dark that like, I don't even know who I would recommend this movie to. Hey, howdy, future editing Blake chiming in here. I completely forgot to mention the fact that for people who haven't seen Kinds of Kindness, it is 3 separate movies in one. So there's like, kind of like separated as like chapters, but it's basically, you know, how old storybooks, they would have sometimes multiple stories in one. It's like that essentially. But yeah, there's 3 separate parts. I forgot to address that, so this is me addressing that. Anyways, you can proceed with this video. Because it's, simply put, not for everybody. But Jesse Plemons in this movie, absolutely fantastic. He plays 3 different characters, and I think that pretty much the entire cast plays 3 different characters, except for like Hunter Schafer is only in one of them. But overall, they have 3 different stories. The first one is really interesting, really dark and twisted, shows kind of like the different levels and the depths that people will go for being accepted and being loved. Even if toxic love is the only thing that this person knows, he'd rather have that than being alone, because he tried stepping away from the toxic relationship and realized that that's all he wants. And it kind of shows some of the negative sides of like toxic relationships, but also importantly, that feeling of, or that need to be, oh wait, no, I think I was right the first time. The feeling that you need to be loved at all times and you need to be accepted, and like what you would do just to feel that love and to feel that acceptance. And yeah, they do some really sick and twisted things. This entire movie I think could be described as Jesse Plemons having a eating disorder, because the first one, he is having problems with eating and he's like starving himself a lot throughout the movie. And then the second one, cannibalism, that's a thing that happens. And it's just so weird how all over the place this movie was. And I think that at the end of the day is the thing that's keeping it below the other 2, because the first one I was so on board with. I thought it was fantastic, and the way that first movie part of it ended was great. And then the second one, it's like the cannibalism one, and I'm like, there's a lot of elements to it that are interesting, and I think it is very like captivating. Like, he's clinically insane, and it's an unreliable narrator, and there's a lot of stuff with that I enjoy. It kind of reminds me of like some Edgar Allan Poe old stories and stuff like that, and there's elements to it that I enjoy. But overall, some of these sequences just seem like overly dark, just because they were like, this is rated R, we should make this darker. And then the last one I fully was not a huge fan of. So the first 2 I thought were fantastic. The last one I was kind of like, that's interesting. But overall, it reminded me of a lot of good movies, and I do really like that. And I really liked the first one. Like I said, this movie is 3 separate movies in one, and it's really interesting. Coming in second place, we have the movie Twisters. Overall, this movie is fantastic. This is the second Glenn Powell rom-com type movie we've gotten in the last 3 months, and I am so insanely excited about this. This movie, I had a couple of boxes that I needed checked for it, and it hit every single one of them. The tornadoes, having great visual effects, having really good choreography, having interesting sequences where people are having to scramble and try to find safety. Fantastic. The movie gets very intense at times. I think that the cold opening for this is incredible. The first like 10 minutes of the movie just does such an interesting job of showcasing how scary tornadoes are and how careful you need to be, and it just does a great job of setting up Daisy Edgar Jones' character throughout the entire movie. And then overall, I think that this movie does one of the most interesting plot twists that I've ever seen, because there's a group of people and you would kind of assume, okay, yeah, these guys are probably the bad guys in this movie, and then halfway throughout the movie they kind of reveal something, and the entire time they've actually been doing a lot of really good things, but because you're seeing it from Daisy Edgar Jones' perspective, you don't really see them as good people. You just see them as obnoxious jerks. And whenever they do that twist, and it's like, oh, she's been working with the people that are kind of bad the entire time, and now she's working with the people who are good, it's really cool. And I really enjoyed that. And I think that they did a good job of kind of bringing back some of the elements from the first one that really worked. Like there's a gang of misfits that are going around and chasing tornadoes, and they're having a really fun time. And because of that, you watch this movie and you have a really good time. Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones had incredible chemistry, and I think that the love story here is fantastic. And overall, I just thought that it was a very, very fun movie, and it was also insanely funny. And overall, I loved it. But coming in first place, I'd like to draw your attention to the room behind me. I realize I have a graphic up right now, but Deadpool and Wolverine. Absolutely love this movie. It is absolutely fantastic. And now I would like to draw your attention to the room behind me. I'm a big Marvel fan. Marvel will always be one of my favorite things ever. And even though when I first left the theater watching Deadpool and Wolverine the first time, I was kind of like, that was it. That wasn't really that interesting. I wasn't really a huge fan of this. And my original review, I literally was just like, I don't think this movie worked for me. It's a great movie. It does a lot of interesting things that I really think works for it. And after watching it a second time and watching a lot of scenes and parts of it, because TikTok, man, they're already posting full-on like scenes of that movie, which is crazy to me. But overall, rewatching it, it's pretty damn good. The comedy is incredible. Deadpool is always one of those characters where it's just like, it's going to be a lot more comedy than it is going to be story. And a lot of the stuff that didn't work with me were the story elements. But overall, if you picture this movie as like more of a like meta story as opposed to it being an actual movie, it's kind of like a commentary on superhero media in general. It kind of feels like a parody superhero movie. It kind of solves all of the problems that I have with this movie. The fact that Logan being dug up at the beginning of the movie is such a weird thing, and a lot of people are like, that's a continuity error. He doesn't die until, you know, the 2029. I couldn't remember what year it was. And a lot of people are like, how is he dead right now? Because it's not 2029 and he should still be alive. And oh my God, that's a giant plot hole. And the concept of anchor beings at first being like, this is just some stupid, you know, big time word that they're going to throw in here just so that they could be like, yeah, we're really smart. We're doing this world building thing. But if you think about it, the anchor being is 100% a representation of Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Wolverine, and how after Logan, not the character dying in the universe, but after the movie Logan was released, Fox kind of just slowly like trickled away, and all of their movies kind of went to crap, and a lot of their movies weren't doing good in the box office anymore. And then the fact that Deadpool came and took Wolverine and brought him to the MCU to kind of like save him is actually a perfect example of how in this movie they are saving their timeline from dying out, because Deadpool is so popular, and Wolverine and that version of Wolverine is so popular that they are actually single-handedly going to be keeping that franchise alive. And it's kind of showing how like in the future, if Deadpool and Wolverine are showing up again, they're kind of like the continuation of that Fox universe that is now dead and gone. And I think that that's really cool, and I think that that's awesome. And then obviously the cameo fest in here, there's a lot of cameos in here that work for me. There are a couple of cameos that I feel like this movie could have greatly benefited from, in my opinion, with them advertising how much this is going to be a new addition to the MCU. Deadpool and Wolverine are coming to the MCU. I felt like there could have been some big MCU character who showed up in this. But that being said, I appreciate the cameos we got. I think that the story was fantastic. I think the action sequences, for the most part, worked really well. The only action sequences that didn't work for me were like the ensemble ones. But like I said, watching it a second time definitely helped me kind of enjoy it a little bit more. I think on a first watch, you're kind of like, your expectations are so high. And then since you don't know what's going to happen, you're too focused on what's happening to really appreciate what's happening. So whenever I watched it the second time and I was able to actually focus on the action sequences, I liked it a lot more. There were definitely a lot of flashes that worked for me. But overall, I still think that like everything they did with the cameos could have been a little bit better, like the team of cameos in this movie. But that being said, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. I think that this is the most fun I've had in a movie theater in a while. And fingers crossed it hits that 1 billion mark and breaks the record for highest grossing rated R movie, because I definitely think it deserves it. It is definitely a well-crafted movie that just shows the love of comic book characters behind, you know, Ryan Reynolds, Sean Levy, and Hugh Jackman. Like, it is a beautiful passion project, and I love that. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Did I do a better job with speaking slowly? Because I realized I feel like I didn't. But that being said, I'm gonna actually peace out now. Bye.